Hey everybody, thanks for checking out the Aaron Advantage. This is episode 22 of Real Talk Real Estate, and before I get started, the first thing I want to say is thank you to everybody who has already kind of commented and viewed what this evening's topic is about on my Facebook profile earlier. Already sparked a decent amount of debate and discussion on tonight's topic, which is Crawlspace or Slab. Tonight, I'm not going to get into specifics of construction or cost of construction or anything else like that as far as any specific details. I just want to talk a little bit about the pros and the cons of whether or not your home has a crawl space or a slab foundation, and kind of what the better options are depending on where you live in the country, because some people do think that one is better than the other, and it's not always necessarily exactly what you think. So the first thing I want to talk about is the fact that I was doing some research, and as always, this is live. Feel free to comment as you're watching. I've got my Facebook up live here as well, so if I do see any videos or comments coming in while we're going, I'll try to respond to those as well. Andy, thanks for the comment. So first thing I want to talk about, the research I was looking at, up until about the 1970s, pretty much everybody who started a new construction home primarily was looking at building it on a crawl space. Back in the 1970s is really when slab home foundations really started becoming a little bit more prevalent or a little bit more common to see. So since they started primarily building with crawl spaces, let's talk about the pros and cons of those first. The first thing I want to talk about on pros is they work really good on a sloped lot. You can go ahead and build a crawl space at varying heights in different areas, which makes it a little bit easier to put it in a lot that doesn't necessarily have a complete level surface. That's going to make the grading work and other stuff that goes into putting in the foundation a little bit easier at times, but that could also affect the cost because the material cost for building up in different areas is going to vary. The other thing is that a crawl space does work a little bit better on certain types of soils, just depending on where you're at in the country. If you have soil that's normally going to be moving a little bit more easily or things of that nature, you don't necessarily want to have a concrete slab foundation because those do tend to crack a little bit easier than obviously a crawl space would. So you're going to have a little bit of settling going on. You may want to look at getting a home with a crawl space. Another pro to a crawl space is that they are a little bit more accessible for your plumbing, your wiring, your ductwork, and other things. I know for a fact, personally, my home is on a crawl space. I've had a leak in the crawl space before from the plumbing, and it made it real nice and easy for me to be able to get under the house, locate where the problem was, get the water shut off, and take care of things before the issue became really bad and really expensive to fix. So that is one pro there for the crawl space if you're looking at that. Some areas, if you've got a really deep crawl space, you can even use them for some storage space, which is an added bonus that a lot of people who are on a slab may not have. Another thing is that termite inspections are a little bit easier. You can actually do a complete termite inspection because you can get under the house and check out the sill plates and the floor joists and everything else to see if there's any kind of termite activity that's going on under the home a little bit quicker and a little bit easier than you may in a home that's on a slab foundation, where you don't have the access to different areas where they may be gaining access to the home until they've done substantial amounts of damage and they become visible on the interior of the home. So those are some pros that you might have for a crawl space. Now on the flip side, some of the cons are, if you have any kind of mobility challenges or you're in a wheelchair or anything else, they can be a little bit harder to get into because they are always going to be raised above the ground level. So that's one thing that's definitely a downside to people who are looking at different homes if they have to look at a difference on that. Pro flood zone areas, Mary, that's a very good point. If you're in a flood zone area, slab homes, since they are at ground level, are a little bit more prone to flooding. You're going to be getting water in the home a little bit easier, so that's a good point. Another con to putting in a crawl space is it actually costs more money to build a crawl space than it does to put in a slab foundation. In addition to that, it also takes a little bit longer than it does to pour a slab concrete foundation. So those are a couple different things that if you're building a home and you're considering what's the best option for you, the cost and the timing that goes into that could be factors that are going to determine whether or not you want to use a foundation that's poured concrete or if you're going to go ahead and put a crawl space in. Another thing is that they are a little bit less efficient on utilities than a slab foundation is generally. So that's another thing you may want to think about for the long run. So now I'm going to get into slab foundations. Like I said, they have become a lot more common since the 1970s. I actually grew up in a home in Owensville in Gibson County here in Indiana that was completely built on a slab foundation. So I'm very familiar with slab foundations, and I gotta say that one of the major cons I've heard about them growing up, about how they're hard on your joints and hard to stand on and walk on and everything else. I grew up in one pretty much my entire life, and I never had any problem with that. So that's one thing that's kind of a myth in my opinion on slab foundations. Some of the pros definitely is the fact that they do help prevent mold growth. That is a big thing, especially in moist climates like here in southwest Indiana, where we've got a lot of humidity and we've got a lot of moisture in the air. I have looked at a lot of Crawlspace inspection reports over the years I've been in real estate, and because of that humidity that we have, we do see a lot of mold growth. As a matter of fact, I can tell you that probably 70% or so of the inspections that I get in crawl spaces generally have some type of organic growth that's noted in the crawl space, typically because crawl spaces do accumulate that moisture and allow that mold to grow. Mold is no bueno. Mark, you're absolutely right. Thank you for that comment. In addition, another pro for a slab, like I said previously, they don't require any steps necessarily into the home. So if you do have someone who has any kind of mobility challenge, who's in a walker or in a wheelchair or anything else, it makes it a little bit easier for them to gain access into the home, which is always a thing that you want to take into consideration whenever you're building a home or if you're looking at purchasing a home that already exists. Also less expensive, as I mentioned previously. If you're looking at saving money, that's one route that you might be able to go to kind of help out that way, as well as being more efficient, which is going to save you more money in the long run as well. Now, some of the cons, you're going to kind of hear these as a redundancy because they're a little bit of rebuttal or a negative of what the pros were on the crawl space. But one of the cons is cracking slab foundations. Now, that's generally not going to happen in an area where you don't have soil that's moving or shifting all the time. If you're in an area that's pretty stable, you're going to be all right. But areas like California or other places where there's a lot of earthquakes or other things that are going on, like mudslides, things of that nature, they can cause substantial damage to the foundation of the home because they're going to be able to be cracked a little bit more easily. Now, here in southwest Indiana, we don't really run into that issue quite so often. Sometimes you may hear of some subsidence issues in areas that could cause some kind of problems, but most of the time you're going to be okay and not run into that issue. Another thing is that they can be prone to cracking due to like tree roots or other things. So if you are putting in a slab foundation, make sure you're doing things that are going to prevent large trees from growing in the area to kind of go in and mess up your foundation as well. Now, the other thing I want to talk about, which is the big thing on the con, in my opinion, is that they're a little bit harder on repairs or remodeling if you have to go in and do anything, because they don't have that same accessibility to your plumbing or your drains or your HVAC or your wiring or anything else that might be put in underneath the foundation. It's going to limit the amount of things that you can do easily to remodel the house or change the floor plan or the footprint of a home whenever you're going into that. So that's one thing that is the major con, in my opinion, on a slab foundation that you're not going to run into in a crawl space. I'm getting some comments here. Andy Phillips did put their hard on joints on a slab. How often or hours you actually stand walking home, it's going to make a difference. I don't know how hard it actually is going to be on that all the time. I think that's going to be, like he said, kind of dependent on whether you're up and moving around all the time or if you're sitting on the couch or different things of that nature. Now, people always say that a slab is always better or a crawl space is always better. And I want to know in the comments down below your personal preference on what you think is better, because in our area, it can be more of an opinion than it can be in other areas. The truth is that slabs are generally going to be better in areas that have a more humid or moist climate, but aren't going to be areas that are prone to flooding. Because like I said previously, if you have an area that floods typically, it's going to be easier for water to get into the home because it is already at the ground level. But on the flip side, we do have moisture in the air quite frequently, and we do have a lot of houses on crawl spaces that do get mold in them. Now on the other side, a crawl space in our area, because we do have areas that are in flood zones, could be something that is better to do because you're not going to get water into the home. That's always a good thing to be able to have as well. So in our area, I do see a lot of people who say a slab is better or a crawl space is better. But I want to know what your thoughts are in the comments. So let me know your preference on a crawl space versus a slab foundation. I'm going to link to an article where I found a lot of this information in the comments as well, so you can check that out. Let me know what your thoughts are on the article as well, and any questions you might have that I didn't answer or you couldn't find in this article. I'd be happy to get a conversation started and kind of go over this a little bit more. I am always looking to hear your feedback on Real Talk Real Estate. I'd like to know what kind of topics you want to hear about or anything else that you want to know about the real estate industry. So feel free to give me a call at 812-779-6273, or you can send me a message on here, and be sure and share this with your friends so that they can know about what's going on here on my show. I go live at 9 every Monday night, and I really appreciate all the comments and all the feedback on the show tonight. Hope you have a great one. I'll be talking to you soon.